Welcome everyone to another episode of the Leadership Espresso Podcast. And this time I'm actually thrilled to have a mastermind on the show. It is Dr. Götz. He is author of over 50 books around psychology and a deep understanding how the human mind and brain and the heart works. And above all, he runs a huge business, a global business on things that really truly matter to everyone out there. He met billionaires, so he is the person to talk to about the current situation of COVID-19. And thank you, Chuck, for taking your time and sharing your energy, your wisdom, which is a vast wisdom. And a big hi to Hawaii.
Aloha. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yes, I really, really appreciate that. And I think from this podcast, people all over the place in business can take away a lot. So I'm promising a lot. And let's start right away. Your first book, or any of the books, somehow start with what happens when shit happens, or what do we do, or and we are in such a situation right now. So, Chuck, where are we, and where do we go from here?
So the first thing to know is that this is a big wave coming at us, and a lot of businesses are right on the edge. And it's important when a big wave is coming to turn your ship into the wave instead of getting hit broadside. Uh-huh. And so it's like having that positive attitude about going through this, trusting yourself, having confidence in yourself and the unfolding, and giving it all right into the heart of this wave that's coming at us. Jung once said the only way to get through something is to go right into it. Otherwise, it holds on to us. And, I've been predicting for years that what our generation came for was to move from exaggerated independence partnership. This is a whole new way of doing business, because basically many companies are just built for, success and money and things like this. But now we need to take a look at a ecologic point of view. And I don't mean just the environment, though I do mean that also, but to take into account, the owners, the workers, everyone, and to move to a different form of business that would be interdependent.
Now, I take your metaphor with the ship, and that we put the ship into the right direction. And, it looks like we have either COVID behind us or we're in the midst of COVID. So the metaphor with the ship is most captains, most CEOs would believe they put their ship in the right direction. And yet we all know that's not true, because we wouldn't have this crisis if it was in the right direction.
No, it's like this crisis is something that collectively we have come to deal with. If we made a collective promise to get to partnership and we've been lagging sadly behind, then this is actually a way of forcing us to see a different way of doing things, to do things from a cooperative point of view rather than just competitive point of view. And that's a major shift, because we all grew up competitively, even from our very first families. So it's like how to graduate. And so when you have a collective issue that contains the whole earth, it's like now it's time to really reflect on what's going to work. Stefan, if I asked you, what if COVID is here at the same level or worse in a year? What happens to business?
I guess in a year's time, if we have a second wave like we did in Germany, we had a lockdown for a couple of months, and that was, it was devastating to most businesses. But having a second lockdown, this would be the end. I mean, serious.
In the States, they say we haven't even finished the first.
Yeah. You have a different president.
Yes, we do. Sorry for that.
Yeah.
It's like he seems to be really gung-ho for business and business leaders, but the problem is he's trying to do it the old way, and that's not going to work. So what happens if COVID is here in 2 years?
We have a global breakdown, and wars are going to start. Civil wars will start. I don't want to even think about it.
Yeah. How about 3 years?
Big wars are starting. Many people are losing.
Mm-hmm. So let me tell you a quick story. I had a promoter of mine in London about 20 years ago, actually 30 years ago. And she also brought in someone who would hypnotize a whole group of people and take them into the future. And 250 years from now, the headlines were catastrophic, almost cataclysmic. And the earth was just disintegrating. And so I said, this can all change, even though everybody was coming back with the same headlines. I said, just, have him do some healing. Have him do some, he's a change agent, but it's not all dark. So she went in, suggested that to him. He did a simple healing exercise in the present for the future. Then he hypnotized people, took them into the future, and all the headlines had changed. They were all positive headlines. So we're working now, and we're working not only for ourselves, but we're working for everyone, especially as business leaders.
Absolutely true. And how do we make this wave, this movement, this change sustainable? If most people you talk to, they say, I understand. We need to shift. And then the next day they do exactly the opposite. So how do we, is this the political leaders? Is it the bottom-up change? Is this a grassroots movement? Or, I mean, everybody knows it's going to be catastrophic if we don't change.
So, yes, and as leaders, as business leaders, we're called to be change agents. But if we're unwilling to change ourselves and change the way we think, change our relationships, then our ship is sunk. 20 years ago, I predicted that if the world is to be saved in this century, it will be done through business. So we have a very important part. And I predicted that in 40 years, so 20 more years, the world would be run not by national governments, but by, and not the huge, businesses that are spanning the earth and can be more repressive even than our governments. So we need, visionary business. The next week I talked to a friend of mine who was in a think tank, a real prestigious think tank in London. And she said, what we got is that business will be running things in 30 years. So that's 10 more years. Mm-hmm. So it's time to either get ready and be that visionary change agent or change our underwear, because it's going to be one or the other.
Yeah.
And so the first step.
Yeah.
The first step is letting go of what we're holding on to, the old way of thinking, how our businesses used to be 6 months ago. It's a much different world. And if we don't let go, we'll be holding on. And it's like trying to hold sand in your hands. The tighter you grab it, the more it runs out.
I fully agree, Chuck. And if I my perception about the situation is that most business leaders, at least in Germany, they haven't learned the lesson, because what they do now is every year before they just put an extra 10% in their Excel sheet, increase 10% by revenue. That was their strategic planning. Now this year, I thought the CEOs would rethink the business model entirely. No, what they do is rescaling. They double down by 10%. They do the same exercise, they just double down. So how can we inspire? What does it take that people have the vision or the courage or whatever is necessary to say, okay, I'll stop the reflex of doing the same way, and we change. I change.
So if we're willing to let go of how business has been and open our mind, then what happens is new ways of thinking, new ways, even for the transition to go from how we are now to how it's going to be. One thing that seems for sure is that it's going to need a lot more cooperation.
Sure.
One of the founding fathers of the U.S., when there was the American Revolution, said, if we don't hang together, we'll certainly hang separately. We'll hang apart.
Yeah.
And this is what's called for. It's like how to change how it's been to what it's going to be, that deals with the people that work for us, that deals with our community, that actually is basically working together with our communities and working worldwide. Contribute locally, think globally. But people, if you're holding on to the old ways, it's like you could just let that go. It's like, from what I've seen, and this whole this whole social shift that's going on, it's like if we don't go with the wave, and we could surf. In Hawaii, we say the waves never stop, so you might as well learn to surf.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the surfers also say, if it swells, ride it. So that's the way a true businessman thinks, right? So what this is, it will be something that the whole community supports and the workers will support, to get to so that the company would be like a football team. Everybody's working together because our lives depend on it, because our children depend on it. So how to go from a change agent, which is what as leaders we're called to be, to a visionary. Now, what it would mean is that you're willing to go through emotional births yourself, and to realize, like if you woke up, Stefan, in the middle of the night and you were giving birth to a baby, what would you think is happening to you?
I'd be overwhelmed.
Right.
I'd be freaking out.
Right. All of a sudden there's all this pain, and what's happening to me? You think somebody had come in to change your transmission.
Yeah, probably more than that.
Yes, but actually, it's a place where this is a birth. But if you don't see it as a birth, it's a death. Part of our mind, the destructive part of our mind, the repressive part of our mind, is saying, yeah, might as well give up. Time to die. There's no hope. But that's not the way of our creative mind, which is actually in touch with heaven. And heaven wants us to succeed and leap forward. And that's what vision produces. The positive future comes into the present and shows the way forward.
So, Chuck, how can we inspire our leaders to open up to that visionary state, to open up to what wants to emerge, to what wants to unfold? How do you get from here to the other place?
20 years ago, there was a multi-billionaire who ran a company in Japan. And what he would do, he would come into work, he would put the do not disturb sign on his door, he would put his feet up on his desk, and he would just kind of wait for inspiration, even vision. And when his company did the best is when he went away. Now, he never wanted to go away because he was the CEO. He wanted to ride that horse. He wanted to ride that ship. But when he came to a workshop was when his company did the best. And it was that he took his hands off and he let his team run the show, and they were happy to perform. They were happy to do their best. But what he was doing, he was healing. Mm-hmm. He was changing. Mm-hmm. And that helped everything.
I get the picture, and you know, and my point is, someone who has not had that experience, you know, it's like driving a car. You know, Tesla has built a car that's supposed to drive on its own, but it doesn't yet. And now, if you're the driver and somebody tells you just put off your hands, the car drives itself, they go nuts, they go crazy. Mm-hmm. So what are the steps that we can build in between to inspire, to motivate, to seduce, to tell them, listen, mm-hmm. if you had this experience once, you'd be never want to missing it again.
Okay. So there is one way, first of all, to clear the mind. And imagine you didn't have these 1,000 thoughts going on in your mind, these worries, these cares. And actually, worry is a place of self-attack. Okay, so you're attacking yourself, you're attacking your business, you're attacking the people you worry about. Who would guess that, right? We think that's our job. I'm the CEO, I have to worry about everything. 9. It's like what you're called for is to see the way forward in the midst of this typhoon. And the one way to do that is to sit quietly. It helps with your eyes closed, but it's not necessary. And every thought that goes through your mind, you go, this thought reflects a goal that's keeping me from my purpose. Now, my purpose as a business leader is vision. It's seeing a positive way forward. This thought, and now you know you'll have 1,000 thoughts go through your mind, but each time you say that, it grabs onto the thought and it falls away. Now, the same thought may come up worse because the worst thought was already there. So you just do it again. In about 15 to 20 minutes, your mind will be like this quiet, placid lake. And then that's when you ask, on this clean mind, let my purpose be given. Let the way forward be shown. Doesn't matter what the words are. It's that desire to find a better way for yourself, your family, your company, those you love. So it's like, if you did that every day, your mind would get clear of the debris, because all of those thoughts are from personalities, and they're saying to succeed, go this way or that way or that way. And, you know, you might have 5 great ideas out of 100 ideas that would look good but don't work. And that's where the world is now. And in some places, like some places in the US, it's much further back. But this is a place where we can take responsibility. We can clear our mind to see the way forward. And guess what? You know, to close your eyes and deal with your own mind, that can be anxious. But it gives you back your power. And I'm sure there's hundreds of ways, but this is one way I know to get your mind clear. So the creative ideas, the Creator created us creative. So we have that heritage. We have that within us. And so as we clear our mind, the great truths within us, the courage to give a birth. I mean, it's like, yeah, we men, we're soldiers, but the women give birth. Which one do you think is scarier?
Giving birth.
Yeah. Would you want to you take a uniform every day to giving birth? Now, this is a birth time for the planet. And the more we as CEOs, the more we give birth to the future, it's to ourselves, actually, to find a better way. And it's crucial that our relationships be partnership with our wife or husband at home, because otherwise, that's our ego, whether you're fighting with your partner, because every fight has a delay. Every fight is based on fear. And you could just step beyond the fight and both of you get the answer. But most people, they want to be right. And being right just hides where you feel wrong. The more people act like they're right, we won't mention a few presidents like that, but the more you act like you're right, the more guilt you feel. And that's completely self-punishing and self-attacking. And all you get into is your ego's way of doing things, and it doesn't want partnership. So get your families in order, get your relationships in order, because let me tell you another quick story. It was 5 years ago in London, doing a workshop that was mostly business leaders. And at the end, we had a panel of a woman whose husband there was the man they had running the company was trying to take over their company. And then there was another whose wife and her husband's company was going bankrupt. And then we had another business leader who had just lost 20 million pounds. So as we got talking with the panel, we found out that the women's husbands had been bad dogs. They've been out having affairs, things like this. And it came out that their wish was to punish their company in what their husband really held dear, which was his company, his baby, his thing. And this was their way of saying, you've been a bad dog. And it was so evident to everybody in the room that their partner held the power. And they needed that partnership to succeed. Now, within 10 minutes of the guy who'd lost 20 million pounds, it's like he had pissed off every woman in the room.
I guess you would, yeah.
So you can guess now he wasn't having an affair, but he was so adamant about his way. He wasn't listening. He didn't get it. So it's like, and the women were just the way he was acting and treating the women in general. They could imagine what his wife was feeling. Anyhow, he had lost 20 million pounds. So he got it. He got his mistake. And in the next month, he earned 30 million pounds. So your partnership is crucial. And that's where it starts.
Now, this could be good or bad news for some of the CEOs.
But it's time to clean up your act. So I worked with one of the wealthiest men in China about 30 years ago. And he was in the workshop and he was bragging about, he had his wife, his main wife, and they had a couple other main wives. And then he had hundreds of girlfriends, all around China. And he was bragging because he could afford it. And I was smiling and I said, you're holding yourself back because you're wasting your creative energy. And he goes, what? He says, I have one of the biggest companies in China. He said, everything's really successful. What else could I want? I said, what you were meant for is to be one of the biggest companies in the world. And by indulging yourself, you're wasting your energy. Your sexual energy is your creative energy. Your sexual energy can also be miracle energy, but willful people use it just for sex. So it's realizing what's the difference when, I'm using that sexual energy as a form of love rather than indulgence, and I can build with my partner. That's what happens with partnership. You build with it. A surprising thing that I share in my business workshops is the importance of their partner. 30 years ago, they did a interview with Fortune 500 CEOs, and all 500 said these three things that were similar. One is that they had a good relationship with their partner, whether it was a husband or a wife. They had a really good relationship. The second one was that they believed in a higher power. Now, this higher power, whatever you call it, is working for you. Too bad you're not listening. Heaven's, will for you is total happiness. That means total success. That means you get the answer and you lead the way. So the next aspect is that it's take time for yourself, exercise, sport, something that's kind of me time to regenerate. Because if you're going all out all the time, then what happens is you'll burn out. And that's dead zone. That's not leadership. So how to get to this place of having this great relationship and using your partnership. Now, this is a time where a lot of partnerships, not just companies, but a lot of partnerships are at risk. But there's ways to get through that. It's like I've written 14 books on relationships. And it's how at the heart of every problem you have, there's a relationship problem. You can't have a problem without a grievance. So it's like being able to change these things so that you naturally step forward. You don't have to figure out a way to your willingness that brings the future to you. And that cuts through this tremendous fear that's shackling the world to, oh my God, I keep losing things.
I'm really I'm sensing a lot of wisdom and I'm feeling very peaceful. So this typically means that there's a lot of truth in what you say, and I acknowledge that tremendously, and I open up to how can we be of help to those leaders to get the turning point. But that's one way of putting it. But the other way I found, and maybe you can give your observation in this. Up until a couple of months, I thought, oh, COVID-19, that's the worst that could happen. Then I found, and I was complaining about it because the revenue drops and blah, blah, blah. But then I found, isn't that exactly the time I am born for? Isn't that the truth? I wanted to be here because I wanted to shift. I wanted to shift for myself, for my family, for my kids, for my company. I wrote a book about it, The Next Wave in Business. I waited for all that time. So I shifted and said, no, it's not the worst time. That's about the time. So right. How can we help people relate to shift the perspective and bring back the camera onto their own purpose, onto their destiny, onto why are they here now? It's not by mistake, it's by design.
22 years ago, working deep in people's minds and getting into the unconscious, the deepest part of the mind that's not spirit, I found that we had all made this promise. Our generation had made this promise that we would take the world from this dissociated independence, competitive independence, into partnership and cooperation. So that was something that I saw 22 years ago. Now, what can you do? You can reinforce, learn how to strengthen your relationships, because let's say your wife, your relationship with your wife, that's the closest person to you, and that will reflect the worst traps, but some of the best qualities also. So it's how to strengthen that, how to strengthen with your children. Remember, they will choose the old age home you go into. So treat them well. Be their partner. Have faith in them. And the second part is, it's like, in this world, besides strengthening partnership, it's being generous, being cooperative. It's like, what could you do to give in general? I got the message to give to the whole world. So once a month, I am doing just a 2-hour webinar, free webinar for the world, so that people move forward. And it's really kind for people in Asia, timing wise, and Europe, not so good for North America. But it's like, how could I be more generous? Who are the people around me that need help? Who are the people that need a word of encouragement to see a better way? One of the things that is now accelerating is I had set up a coaching service for executives. So I'm in the planning stages of, providing that worldwide for families, for couples, but for business leaders, because they're the ones leading the way. 100 years from now, it'll be Aboriginal people who have their relationships with nature and with all others. Like in the Haida tribe in North America, they end every prayer with all my relations, meaning all people, all four-legged animals, and nature itself, as well as the creator. So they recognize that, but we'll need that, 80, 100 years from now. Right now, we need business to, find the way. You're meant to be the cover girl for business right now. Stefan, you willing to be the cover girl?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe cover boy, but
yeah. How about are you willing to be the centerfold?
Yeah.
Yeah. And to go, here it is. Let's go. Let's lead the way. Let's find the way together.
Yeah, this is the part I really enjoy. Maybe 20 years ago, I thought it was all about me. I had to know the way. But the part, let's play together and find out together. This is the part where I feel all the pressure kind of disappears, and it's opening up and putting myself at service, well, Jack, we could talk for hours.
I want to tell you one more story, and it's the power of giving it all. Because when you give it all, you receive it all, and that opens your mind to business. It's like you put it all on the line. 17 years ago, I was doing a business workshop in Honolulu, and there was a fellow from Taiwan, and he talked about, in the flood that happened in Taiwan, his whole company had been flooded, and his aluminum furnaces had been flooded, and they stopped working. He called all the experts in the world, and every expert said, you can never restart an aluminum furnace. They're gone. You've lost it. Now, he had 300 people working for him, 300 families depending on this company. So he decided, there has to be a better way. I will not settle for this. This is not heaven's plan, and it's not my true plan. I want the answer. And he stayed at his office and he slept at his office, and he worked on this problem. He worked in spite of what all the experts says. In 30 days, he had a way to restart the furnaces that everybody else had said was impossible. Vision is going, everybody says it's impossible, but there has to be a better way. It's like they said, I remember when I was a kid, they said they scientifically proved nobody would ever run a 4-minute mile. We have all kinds of people running the 4-minute mile. It's like, but you have that sense, that rock hard confidence that heaven is working with you. So, if you knew who walked beside you, you wouldn't be afraid. And at the root of every problem, there's a number of roots, but at the root of every problem, there's fear. So heal the fear, and the next step comes to you. And one way is to remember who walks with you. So it's like, your angel is always there. I mean, psychology of vision is a transpersonal psychology. So we work with non-denominational spirituality. Your angel's trying to guide you, trying to protect you, trying to help you, and every time, you listen to them, they get another feather in their wings. Right now, most of your angels look like supermarket chickens. Give them a break. They're really embarrassed. So, their job is you. Listen up. And humor, it's a time to really get the joke.
Absolutely.
The humor creates flow, and it's really necessary right now.
Chuck, I really enjoyed every single minute of our dialogue, of our conversation. I know there's so much wisdom and experience with that. And I'm so delighted that you open up so much on free webinars and that you plan on this executive coaching thing. I can highly recommend anyone. 1 hour of Chuck will be probably worth 1 year of business gained, even probably more. So I put it in the comment section. I put your company website so people can contact you, and you just nailed it to me in many ways. But one way I always remember there must be a better way. And I truly believe in that. We have all our greater powers and higher minds with us this time. And thank you for being such a great lighthouse. All the years I've known you now for 20 years or more. So as it is a Leadership Espresso podcast, be inspired, everyone. What else? And comment, ask questions. I make sure they get sent over, or we do another episode on all the questions that may arise. And next time, Chuck, I talked to Elizabeth McCourt about female leadership. She lives in New York, and we will continue, the path that we were actually taking, because basically we were talking a lot about feminine energy. That's the receiving part. So I will continue that journey with Elizabeth. So thank you for today. Really appreciate it. You're such a great lighthouse to me and to lots of people out there.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you, Stefan.